You're listening to TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour with your host, the Director of Dixie Heritage, Dr. Ed DeVries.
Recently, I was asked if there was any particular guest that I had received the most requests for. In other words, who was the person that the most number of people in our listening audience are emailing and asking, saying, Dr. Ed, can you have fill in the blank on your show? And it wasn't even something that I had to think about. The answer to that question was H.K. Edgerton. I do not know in the last year or so that we've been doing the broadcast, TBR Radio presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. I do not know how many times, at least a couple times a week, somebody will email me or contact me and ask me when I'm going to have H.K. Edgerton on the radio show. And I've been sitting on his telephone number for a little while now, and I should have called him a lot sooner than I did. I apologize to those of you who've been asking for him. It's just that other guests have been presenting themselves, so I've not had to chase down a guest. And so I just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. I'll call him next week, I'll call him next week, I'll call him next week, and it never happens. Well, HK got himself into a little bit of a tussle down there at the University of Mississippi. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to call him. And I did. I called him on his cell phone, and we recorded the call. And that's going to be our radio show today. And it's going to be about an hour-long conversation that I had with HK. And, of course, the further we get into it, the more freely he begins to talk and the less I have to ask him questions. One thing I will say is I was calling him on his cell phone, and there are times when there's a little bit of wind noise in the background. There is also some times when he's just a little hard to hear, and that's just the nature of trying to record a cell phone call. But if you'll make the effort to listen, you'll hear some really good stuff on today's broadcast. Actually, when I'd called him, I tried to set up a time maybe when we could record the interview at a later day, maybe the next day or a few days down the road. But he was really eager just to do it right then and there. And of course, what can you say to that kind of enthusiasm? But hey, let's do it. So without any further ado, here is my telephone conversation with Confederate heritage activist and former N.A.A.C.P president, H.K. Edgerton. This is Dr. Ed DeVries with the Dixie Heritage Hour.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Oh, good. You know, a lot of our radio listeners know who you are, obviously, but for those who don't, or for those who would like to get to know you a little bit better, you started out as the president of the N.A.A.C.P. You were not always an activist for the Confederate. Start by telling us a little bit about your days back in the N.A.A.C.P.
That's a tough question because basically, coming to president of the NAACP, or being a member of the NAACP, when I came home, there were a lot of people that were having problems and didn't know where to go. As a matter of fact, I had a cousin who was having problems with his business. He was in the paving of highways and sidewalks, and so I kind of went to the NAACP for help. They told me that they really didn't do a lot of helping anymore. They just met, and it was more like a social organization than anything else. That didn't sit well with me. They asked me to be their first vice president, and I almost was just elected on the floor. It became a battle of trying to find answers to a lot of problems that people were having, whether it was with housing or with the kids in school, with a very low graduation rate, housing. That's basically one of the reasons why I certainly became a member of the NAACP again at that time. Later on was elected president. Did a lot of things as president. Rewrote the minority business program for the county and the city, or helped rewrite it. Became the chairman of the program and planning commission for the Whatcom County Drug Commission. There's a lot of things, but mostly in the civil rights and human rights. Nothing real fancy about that. That's just one of the things you're supposed to do. Right. As part of community leader. That was basically it.
Were you already aware of your Confederate ancestry at that time, or was that something that came about later?
You know, always aware of it. When I was a little kid, my mom the kids in the neighborhood would have their tricycles, and she would put a clothespin and cardboard in the sports, and put a battle flag behind our seats. So I don't know where my mom got all those little battle flags from. Then asked, the only thing we knew is that we had them and we just enjoyed them. She talked about her Southern ancestry because it was one of the things that people talked about. But it wasn't really no heavy thing about it. We were just Southern.
Was there a time when your advocacy for your Southern heritage and your advocacy in the NAACP overlapped, or were they two?
No, because it wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue. The only time the issue arose is when the NAACP wrote its 1989 resolution, which basically said that the Southern Cross was an evil oriented light on the universe, and my mom met me at the door. When I returned home, I didn't even know how she knew about it. And she said to me, her very words to me is, if you want to remain the president of NAACP, you better put that resolution in the round file. And that's what I did with it.
You were actually the president of the NAACP at that time, and so I'm going to guess then that you were on the record as having posed that, and was that kind of the beginning of problems in that organization? Or
talks about my problems in the organization. Well, the biggest problem for me with the NAACP came when the Ku Klux Klan came to Asheville. They were treated very badly. They had vowed they would come back to Asheville again, and this time when they came, that it would be just like it was in Greensboro, North Carolina, in sometime during the late 70s or early 80s, when the Communist Party threatened them not to come out, and they killed some folks. No, I certainly did not want that to happen in the city of Asheville. There were members of my executive committee talking about getting their guns and when they came to town. And I just happened to, there was a man who walked his dogs every morning who came through the Black Historic District where the NAACP was, a white man, and he owned a printing company, and he just happened to ask me that morning when I was out doing what I did every morning, sweeping up wine bottles and dope needles and whatever else that was on the streets of the historic Black District where my office was, and he just simply said, HK, you look real down this morning. What's wrong? And I told him, here I am, president of a civil rights organization, and I've got men on my executive body talking about confronting the NAACP, confronting the Ku Klux Klan. I wish I knew somebody who would ask the Klan not to come back to town. And he just kind of looked at me and said, asked me, well, do you know Kirk Lyons? And I said, well, no, I see his name on the paper almost as much as mine. They call him a white supremacist. And I did know one thing about him. I know that he had defended all those black folks that were in Louis Ridge and a few other places. I know he had defended a black man that got beat down in the streets of Hendersonville by a policeman at a time when there was a black police chief. So I knew everything that they said about it wasn't quite true because I knew that there were a lot of things said about me. They hit the front page of the newspaper that weren't true. There were times that I go home and think maybe, I might be Frankenstein because of the things that I read. He said, well, why don't you ask him to see what he can do? And I said, why me though? He told me that he had once defended somebody who was in the top 10 on the FBI wanted list and that he might be able to help me. So he set up a meeting and things went along and I did meet with him, but that's a long story.
I was going to say, you and Kirk are really good friends now.
Absolutely.
And you actually serve on the board for his law firm, do you not?
I am the chairman of the board of advisors emeritus of the Southern Legal Resource Center. Yes, sir.
And then after that, didn't Kirk, as an attorney, actually help you to sue the city of Asheville, North Carolina?
For people in the community not being able to assess affordable housing and some of the funds that were used to repair old housing that belonged to old people. And he was the only one that would help. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund told me that they would come down and investigate if I had $15,000 for them to come and a class airline ticket and a 5-star hotel with their entourage. And I actually really asked out in mind, I didn't have that kind of money just for them to come and investigate. And I had gone to the Black Law Society and asked them for some help. And they said, we're not about to sue the city of Asheville because we do business with them. And Kirk Lyons, in a meeting that I had with him about trying to keep the Klan from coming to town, looked at some of the things that came out of the Affordable Housing Coalition in the Capitol and the executive summary. And he just took the main statement that if I was your attorney, I'd bring the city of Asheville down to its knees. People don't talk about that a lot. It'll probably be in a book I'll write someday.
Okay.
That's how our relationship began.
Well, you talk about things like affordable housing. It sounds like the NAACP was doing some really good work and has the capacity to really help some people if they would just not be sidetracked by things like monuments and statues and flags.
Absolutely. Even the 1989 resolution was absolutely totally asinine. It was a way to replace the coffers of the NAACP, the national organization, the attack on the Confederate Flag on the Capitol grounds in Columbus, South Carolina. First, I was told by the NAACP, a lot of folks that it was fake in 1961 because of the 1961 Civil Rights Movement. It had nothing to do with that. It was the 100th anniversary of the War for Southern Independence. The flag, the battle flag was on capitals all across the South Carolina. They just left it on the Capitol in South Carolina. A prize for the NAACP to replenish its coffers in a nutshell.
This is a great place for us to take a break here, so we're going to pause and we're going to have a commercial from our sponsor, the Barnes Review, and then we'll be back with our guest, H.K. Edgerton. If you love listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, then I know that you'll love reading the Barnes Review. The Barnes Review is one of my favorite magazines. I began reading the Barnes Review long before they became a sponsor here on the program. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There's just not a more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So if you'll visit www.barnesreview.org, that's www.barnesreview.org, you can find out how you too can become a subscriber to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review by mail, or you can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review electronically in PDF editions. Or you can subscribe to receive both. That's what I do. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. I remember when you first came to my attention, and this was early 2000s, and you were engaged in your March Across Dixie.
Yes, sir.
I was out of town. I was speaking out of town at the time you were coming through our area. But I remember our camp commander in our Sons of Confederate Veterans camp, his name was Jim Westmoreland. I don't know if you remember him or not. And he was saying,
I do.
Okay, yes, sir. He was saying you were going to be marching through our area. And I remember I was so intrigued by it. I said, the former president of the NAACP marching through our county with the Confederate flag. I remember telling him, I said, Jim, I gave him a $100 bill. I said, make sure he has a hotel room and dinner when he's here, And I really wanted to meet you at that time. I just, like I said, I had to be out of town. Was that your first real drive as an activist for Southern heritage, or was that just the one that first got my attention?
Well, actually, I was I sat right between Senator Arthur and Senator Glenn McConnell when the attack first began on bringing the flag down off the Capitol dome. And I think that was in the early 2000s. 2002, I think, was the march to Texas. After the NAACP ran an illegal election on me, Kirk Lyons had asked me to join his board of directors. And my first thought was, my God, Kirk, you probably one of the reasons why I'm not president of NAACP anymore. However, he was the only attorney who had agreed to help me with this housing issue in the city of Asheville. I mean, old people were losing their houses through condemnation, taxation procedures. It was very difficult for actually white folks and white folks to access affordable housing. And I just felt like, well, here's a man. And nobody else will come to my aid that, here he is asking me to help him and telling me that, that my life will come full circle. My civil rights fighting life will come full circle. It asked me to take a look at some of the letters and things that were written to his firm. And I mean, by this time I knew that his organization was a nonprofit civil rights law firm that basically handled cases that involved the battle flag or the Christian cross of St. Andrew. He asked me to come and read some letters. Just one day, just come and read some of the letters that I have before you say no to me. So I went to his office. And I mean, I sat down at the desk and I was surrounded by stacks of letters. And I was asking, well, where do I start? Anywhere you want to. And I began to read these letters of people being fired from their jobs because they had coffee mugs with a battle flag on it, kids being sent home, turn your shirt inside out, or take it off or go home. And many of these babies saying, no, this is a part of our heritage. It's not about hate. And quite frankly, a letter from a young black girl out of Louisiana, out of Alabama, it was written to Kirk, and she said, Mr. Lyons, please help me and my friends. My friends are being sent home almost daily because they wear the Confederate battle flag on their clothing. And my great-great-grandmama is, I think at the time she was 81, 82 years old, and every morning she asked me to go across the field to Mr. Smith's house and help him raise his battle flag. And they are inseparable. They are the best of friends. And he never talks about hating black people. He talks about his love of black Confederate soldiers. He talked about them. Talked about the people, the black folks at home who made the clothes for the Confederate soldiers, the women, the food they helped provide, and those who went off to war. And just helped me. And after reading that letter there, it almost put me in the tears. I agreed to sit on church's board of advisors, but then, one morning I asked him, I said, well, first of all, Kurt, how do you choose who you defend? And he said, you can pull out one of those letters and close your eyes. They say, we are a non-profit civil rights law firm, but people think we have a lot of money. We have a lot of money to help all these folks. We have to do briefs and we have to visit them, drive and all. And we just don't have a lot of money to do that. And one day I came home and I'm saying to him, well, I'm not just going to sit on your board as a figurehead. And I'm telling you, this one night I was at home and it just felt like my bed was shaking. And it was like this idea came to me to walk to Texas to raise funds to help get people to donate for each mile I walk to be able to help defend some of these folks, to serve the government offense. And I took the idea to Kurt, and he was like, whoa, HK, that's a long way to Texas, and you're 55 years old. And I'm saying to him, yeah, but, many of the men that served with General Jackson, General Lee, General Price, they were my age, and they had no shoes, and they carried rifles and canteens and packs. Surely I can walk to Texas carrying flags. So, it was like they kicked it around with a lot of people in the organization. And I think they were quite flabbergasted at the fact that I even proposed to do something like that. But they kept putting it off. And one day I told my little brother about what I wanted to do. And he said, well, I'm going with you and I'm going to film that. And we went in October 12th. I told Kirk, I'm going down the road. We don't have it. We got an old van. My brother got an old van. He's going to follow me. We going on off. October 14th. Well, actually, October, I think it was the 13th in downtown Asheville. We had a gathering. I was so very proud of some of those folks that came. He was my Black Studies professor from the University of Minnesota. She was there, to my surprise. And on October 14th, down the road I went, 20 miles a day, 6 days a week. Several times I did 45 or more, 60, 300 miles out of the way because some Yankee had come from Edgerton, Illinois, down through the South and had walked almost the same amount of miles I would have walked to Texas. So they asked me to do 300 extra miles, and on January 21st, 2003, I walked the last 5 or 6 miles into the capital of Boston. Got up that next Monday and went on to Corsicana County. Walked another 20 miles because this was the first place that I had been in Texas when high school. The babies had a lawsuit going because had been attacked by the administrators for wearing the Confederate flag. So that was the way that journey began. It probably was the most significant. It was the largest and probably the most significant journey that I made across the Southland of America. Even though there are folks like the National Museum, African American Museum, I don't like that word. They don't want to recognize the fact that it was a historic journey. And I'm very glad that my brother does have a chronicle both in his pictorial journal and his 2-hour DVD of that particular journey. So that was the big one.
How many days did it take you to complete that trek?
How many what?
How many days did it take you, or how many months did it take you to complete that journey?
I left on October 14, 2002. Walked the last 5 miles in Austin, January 21st, 2003. We took the bands. We began to have problems in Louisiana. We drove back home during Thanksgiving, put a band motor in it, and drove back to where we stopped on rides right after Thanksgiving. So from October to 2002, January 21st, after we went the other extra 20 miles, 2003, that's what it took.
As I understand it, I can't remember when this was. I started seeing emails here a while back that you've considered possibly doing it again.
I wanted to do it again. I just couldn't support to do it again. It was our 16-year anniversary. I did do it on the 5-year anniversary, but on the 16-year anniversary, I wanted to go again. And I just couldn't garner the support. I was fighting to do it. Folks just said, well, HK, you waited too long, too close to the date. But, I heard that again. But I just couldn't get my little brother. If my little brother would have said, yeah, let's go again, I would have probably done the same thing we did the first time. But I just couldn't garner the support, so I didn't do it. I had so many other things to do anyway. It's a daily battle for me every day. There's been no let up. And since this thing with Dylan Roof in South Carolina, where the press photoshopped that picture of him with the battle flag and the carnage and the attack on the South, where these folks have gathered up what they believe to be momentum against us. So, that takes up a great deal of my time now fighting that.
I remember when that photoshopped picture came out, John Schneider was our guest on the program. Of course, John, he was Bo Duke in the Dukes of Hazzard. Mm-hmm. He mentioned that Dylan Roof was wearing a Gold's Gym tank top. And so he wanted to know, with all of the opposition to the battle flag, he asked, why aren't we boycotting Gold's Gym?
I understand the question and I understand his concerns. But see, the whole thing was just a huge farce. And it is unfortunate that South Carolina had a weak-kneed governor, and they brag on Nikki Haley a whole bunch, but even though she was born in Bamberg, South Carolina, her parents came from India, via Canada and a few other places, and her background certainly was not strong enough in Southern heritage or the history of the flag, or what really took place there in South Carolina led the way of succession. Her first thoughts were Lindsey Graham when Dylan Roof did what he did. Lindsey Graham put in South Carolina. They had a meeting, and Lindsey Graham first said the flag had nothing to do with it. I was very proud of him. I was on my way to Oklahoma to give a keynote speech on Confederate War Day in the city cemetery there. And I bragged a lot about Lindsey Graham. But the next day after he left, Nikki Haley came out with a resolution to remove the flag from the Confederate soldiers' monument. It's a very disappointing moment for me because we fought so hard to keep the flag over the dome, especially because of the fact that they wanted to bring it down to the shame. But the compromise, supposedly the compromise of the 21st century, was to place it on the Confederate soldiers' monument, and they would never, ever be removed again. That's what we were told. The Northern press descended upon South Carolina. They went out to the Confederate soldiers' monument and said, oh my God, every flag in the Capitol is at half-mast except for that evil rebel flag. That the sons of Confederate veterans would bring it down, or at least deny it of the Confederacy because they own that monument. It took a 10-year-old baby boy, the sons of Confederate veterans can't touch that flag. United Daughters of the Confederacy can't touch it. The only person who can bring that flag down is the governor of the legislature. It came to a back room and came back out over here. And Nikki Haley said she had to do something. Didn't want her town to become like Ferguson, or Black Lives Matter and Antifa and whoever George Soros can bring together will come into our town. This is a poor excuse because what you're dealing with a great deal of honor and legacy and heritage and memorialization of these men and women who made a stand here in South Carolina. And the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division would not have allowed that to happen in the first place. Anyway, they brought the flag down and all that dishonor because after the press went out, the first flag that they showed up with Dylan Roof looked like, to my knowledge, looked like the Liberian national flag and a pistol in his hand. Well, the press went and photoshopped the picture and came back with one with the battle flag in his hand and said, oh my God, We told you that that flag is what caused that boy to do what he did, knowing full well that it was a lie. As I said before, they caved into that lie and they brought the flag down in dishonor. So it had something to do with it. The thing for me is this: if the flag was complicit in this, how come the flag didn't have its trial along with Dylan Roof? No, you didn't, because they knew full well that they were lying about the flag. And now all of a sudden, all these Southern hating folks started surrounding the wagon. No longer did it just become the flag; it started in on all the cenotaphs of the Confederate soldiers, those fallen heroes. Folks running around reading off of Marsh D's website, Southern Poverty, all the crap that they're supposed to say whenever they ask about the monument or about the flag. Oh, walking past the monument, it just tears me up, and I just feel so ashamed and so hurt, and just a lie. And I want them to take a lie detector test, pass, and come through with truth. And I watch it happen. I said in a debate here in my hometown about taking down the Zeppelin band flag down Nashville. Told that same lie. And I told it just like this here, you're lying.
Extra, read all about it. If you're like me, and I'll bet you are because you're listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. You like to hear about the latest financial trends and to know what's happening around the world and right here in the United States. The things that can directly impact you, your life, and the life of your family. And if you're like me, you do not rely on the mainstream media to obtain this information because, frankly, you know that you just can't trust them. Fortunately, there is an alternative news outlet with a long-established track record for honesty and integrity, and that is the American Free Press. AFP is the preeminent alternative, independent news source for honest, hard-working, truth-loving Americans. AFP is the antithesis of the controlled, lamestream media. AFP is employee-owned and has been so since its founding. Because of that, AFP never has and never will allow advertisers or special interests or big money to dictate what appears in the pages of the American Free Press newspaper. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. AFP covers the stories and tells the truth that the lamestream media is frankly scared to touch. And AFP offers real, on-the-scene reporting and commentary, the likes of which you will never see in the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, or just about any other lamestream news source that you can think of. There's only one national populist news weekly staffed by an unsurpassed team of veteran investigative journalists who will dare to rip the veil off of many of the major news stories that are being censored and suppressed by the big money controlled media monopoly. And that's the American Free Press. AFP publishes exciting, in-depth, uncensored news and information that's grassroots and patriotic, information that Americans need to know in order to combat the growing police state. AFP stands firmly against the New World Order and against those who are working to establish a global plantation under the rule of a powerful few. In short, AFP is your voice. If you have any doubt why they want to silence AFP, you must be relying on the lamestream media for your news, and folks, that's a big mistake. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net. And find out about the American Free Press. Do it today.
Extra, read all the Polaroid camera first came out. My mom was the only person in our community that had a Polaroid. She took us down to the monument, dressed us up, took pictures, and all these black people wanted to know, could you take us down to the monument so we could take pictures too? And the sad part about it, her mama was one of those ladies that drove her and her brothers and sisters down there and took pictures at the vast monument of them with her Polaroid camera. Black Lives Matter come into the town and write on the monument, so they say Black Lives Matter, and write it on the monument. Well, you at the right monument where Black Lives Matter, but you need to take that bucket of paint and go someplace else. In the Confederate Army, an integrated army, I might add. I remember this black woman letter to Abraham Lincoln from the North, and had her white friend deliver it to him because she knew Lincoln basically was a baby. He wasn't going to talk to her. And the letter simply said, Honorable Sir, would you please see that the Union surgeons and doctors take care of the black Union soldier? When he gets hurt, they just let him bleed, lay down and bleed to death. In the Confederate, the same doctor who brought Cheddar die into the world, if he got hurt, he got the same service that the white soldiers got because all lives matter in the integrated army. The letter went on to say, and dear sir, would you please see that Union soldiers get the same pay for the same job that white Union soldiers get in the Confederate Army. While that man was not there supposedly legally, those Confederate soldiers divvied up their money to make sure that the black Confederate soldiers got the same pay for the same job they did because the Confederate Army, all lives matter. So Lincoln didn't even get the letter back. He called his snitch Frederick Douglass into his office and told him, just like this. You go back and tell them niggas they got a lot of nerve. With all the prejudice associated with them having on that uniform in the first place, to go out and earn their right to wear it. Now, he spoke around talking about our cenotaphs and our monuments. Those ladies from the Major Memorial Association began building those cenotaphs. It was to those men and women who had lost their lives or who had gone to serve to make their stand against an army that invaded our homeland illegally. An army that was armed to Abraham Lincoln's General 200 to rape, rob, burn, pillage, plunder, steal, and as Sherman said after he came out of Lincoln's office, do this. And that should never be an accounting for what we do. So these folks, some things that we've forgotten a lot. And we have in South Carolina. We probably don't know what happened when that Ford Army came here. And the illegal kind of thing that they did was worse than anything that the Vikings who ransacked Rome and other places. There's no army in the history of mankind that did the kinds of things that this Union Army did to the Southland of America and its innocent old men, women, and children. That's just the bottom line of that part.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your particular Confederate ancestors?
My great uncle went off with the Honorable T.R. Edgerton, Dr. T.R. Edgerton, who was a surgeon out of Rutherford County with the Rutherford Home Guard, and he served as a surgeon helper. On my mom's side, the Williams family was the largest plantation. There were so many records that were burned and sacked by Sherman and his boys. Don't know exactly what they all did. But as I tell people all the time, I can lay claim to any one of those Africans who served in the Confederate Army because I don't know where they all came from. I don't know where they all went. I don't know where all tribes because we went everywhere. The bottom line is we're stuck. And that's in the Southland of America, we were family. So I probably had ancestors going from all over the place. But John Edgerton with TR is one that's foremost in my mind.
You're in your 70s, correct?
This year was one of the proudest birthdays I've had because it fell February 18th. It fell on the day that President Davis gave his first inaugural speech on the Capitol steps of Montgomery, which was then the capital of the Confederacy. It also was the Confederate Day, and it marked that anniversary. It marked my 71st birthday, and for the first time, I could really celebrate President's Day for a good president. So I'm 71 years old. So I don't feel 71.
The only reason I bring it up is I'm trying to kind of do the math, because I know you've mentioned your grandmother and how close you were to her. And I'm going to guess that your grandmother was the actual daughter of a Confederate soldier.
Absolutely.
And so the stories that you grew up hearing, it wasn't like you were hearing them from somebody several generations removed. I mean, you were hearing them from somebody who was pretty close to the source.
That is correct. Well, even my mom, my mom is the only black woman ever received a Confederate state funeral. They talked about these. They talked about history. They talked about these things. There was, even coming up in Jim Crow. I mean, you always wondered. I remember from Jim Crow. I remember on my way out to the country club. Sometimes on Sunday, if I talk my mom out, I go to church on Sunday. But she knew that Sunday night you'd be in church for. You pass by some of the churches, the big churches, the white churches, and you wonder to yourself, wonder why they say that white people don't like black people. Why they would have anything against us. After all, we were the ones that were slaves. That was a young thought. But my mom, even during Jim Crow, colored white, she always said, son, the water's the same. It's no different. Yes, you have to go in the movie theater, you have to go to the balcony. But the balcony is the best seat in the house. And when she explained Jim Crow like that, and my mom was very well respected. I remember one time that the colored bathroom was broken down in SLH presses. And my mom told me, she said, you go into the white bathroom, and if you run into a white man in there, you tell him that your mama told you to help you with your pants. And I straight into the bathroom because my mama told me to go in there. And I remember this big white man. Well, what you doing in here? This ain't the bathroom. So, well, my mama told you to help me with my pants. And he took it up with, come here, boy. Unzip my pants. You better not pee on me. I remember his words exactly. When I got through, zipped up my pants, gave me a pat on my butt, and I get out of here. And I remember that I stopped at the white water fountain. So I made her take me a drink of this too. I drank it and I came back and my mom was standing there waiting for me. She watched me the whole time. I said, Mama, but the water is the same. Son, I told you that. I can remember getting on a bus in downtown Pritchard Park with my mama on a Saturday morning. She go down on Saturday morning, do shopping on Michigan Avenue, and we could get back on the bus. And on that time, black folks had to ride back the bus. And my mom, with all her bags and stuff, and I went to the bus drivers, and I sit that bag down like that in the front of the bus. And that's she said. And this white man got on the bus, went, well, look here, niggas don't go sit on the bus, but he told him, this is Edgerton. If you don't like it, get off the bus. And, he grumbled a little bit, said right now, and my mama and the bus driver talked the whole time, and he took us back to put us off, so we get off at the next bus stop.
Breaker one might be crazy, but I ain't dumb. Crazy Cooter coming at you. Hey, y'all, got your ears on? Well, I got some news for you. We're here at our brand new Cooters in the Country store in Sperryville, Virginia. Good old Sperryville, where Cooters started many years ago. Folks are coming from all over Hazard County, and we're going to have a grand old time with good music, good food, and best of all, good friends. Hope y'all can be there. Whoop, whoop, here come Enos. Huck got Cletus with him. I'm down and I'm gone.
I carry for some of the most prominent people in the country because Asheville is a tourist town. They came from everywhere. I met one, Mr. Mel Gold. I never forget him from Florida because he had a continental Lincoln with reverse doors. I man tried his best to get my mama to let him take me home with him, and he would bring me back home during the summer when he came up here during the summer. My mom said no. I probably don't tell me what I've been right now if I went with that man. No telling how much money I would have been worth if I'd gone with him. But my mom just wouldn't go. She wasn't giving up any of her babies. I was the first black person to work for an MD Electric Company. That's how my time with electronics and electric field began. Because the man who owned the company, I worked my way up to caddy master before I graduated from high school. As a matter of fact, on an afternoon, on a Saturday afternoon, Dr. Billy Graham and Dr. Robert Holstall came to the country club to caddy. I was caddy master at that time, assistant caddy master. And I took off my white coat because this is Dr. Billy Graham. I'm caddying for him. And I remember coming down the 18th hole, and they looked at each other and they said, well, you must be one great golfer because you've shown up caddy. And I told them, I said, well, I'm caddy master. In my high school, we've always wanted a golf team. But I go to all black school and we can't get a golf team. They looked at each other, and I remember Dr. Holstall said, you'll have one this year. I had no idea what he was talking about. We had a new high school that came to Southwest Ball High School that year. Matter of fact, I didn't even really know that we were going to have a new high school. And I remember the first year of school, hearing my name called, Edgerton come to the office, and I go to the office, I wondered what did I do. And sitting behind the principal's desk was Dr. Holstall. Who I had chatted with Dr. Graham, and he said to me, you got a golf team now. I told you would have one. Now you go find somebody to coach it. Off we went. The first black high school golf team in the city. So, and I'm seeing all this. I can remember a man by the name of Mason, like one of my favorite white men, because I chatted with him on Lincoln Oil Company, Edgerton Oil. And I remember him saying to me as I walked down the brick road, just let me tell you something. Your good manners and your hard work ethics that you have, somebody watching. Don't worry about the signs and colors. White, they don't mean a thing. If you keep doing what you're doing now, you will succeed in life. You don't forget those things, and we talk about a period of time in history of Jim Crow. I'm born in it, and I still remember the love that I received and folks around me received from the Christian white folks right here in my own community. They talk about what happened in Mississippi and Alabama and all these other places. When you go and you start to really read the people's letters, because I've read the letters, read the letters and read what go on, there's always more than one side of the story. It is unfortunate what these folks did during Reconstruction when they sent their northern school teachers here to do everything they could do to divide and separate black folks and white folks in the South and in America. It is too bad that our people, especially during this month that just passed, the so-called Black History Month, which I call beat up on white folks in the South Month, whatever it's become. If they don't read the letters of organizations like the Pole Bearers Association, a real civil rights organization that sprang up in the waning days of Reconstruction, what those men said to told the black folks, we're going to do everything we can to regain and retain the loving relationship that we've had with the only man on God's earth that has shown any love to African people, and that's the Southern white man. We will never, ever again be duped by somebody not of the Southern soil. Well, somewhere along the line, somebody lost a memo to these things. The United Monumental Association right out of South Carolina said we're going to do the same. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow the lead of the president of the Pole Bearers. The Pole Bearers was the first, invited John Lincoln up the forest, became the first white man to speak, to give a keynote speech at their reunion right out there in Tennessee. He told those folks that he was going to do everything, use his powers that he had, influences, to do everything he could do to help them become doctors and lawyers and politicians. Wade Hampton, out of South Carolina. Wade Hampton was one of the most powerful, richest men that worked his way up to Brigadier General in the Confederate Army. He did everything he could do to get folks, to allow black folks the right to vote. He fought for them. They said of Governor Hampton, General Hampton, whatever you want to title this more than him. And he wasn't even one. That God set him down out of heaven and put him there to help them. This is like Reverend McLeod, educated off the funds given to him by General Robert E. Lee. Body servant to General Robert E. Lee. Told the black folks, buy yourself some land, get yourself educated, and beyond, keep your faith in our Lord and Master Jesus Christ, and beyond all else, only put your trust in the Southern white man. Do you think that they will tell those kinds of stories during Black History Month around here in the South America and across America? Do you think they talk about Lee Ricon, Hope Collier, and Horace King, bridge builder, go right down to Montgomery, Alabama, aspire to have cases in Montgomery, Alabama? That was Horace King that did that. Horace King, when Joe needed a bridge to be built for his cattle and his horses and his men, he called on Horace King. Whole time, on I can go. Stories about these men. James Harrison, a former slave, state senator, got up out of his sickbed and gave the deciding vote to build a Confederate soldiers' monument. That he wanted to do it. And the speech that he made when he did it, how he talked about all those men that were laid dying, and if the war was still going on, then he would still be wearing the Confederate grave. Thank his missus for taking him in when he was offering. But these folks were they right about the South. They always want to put the South down. Like the South is this place where, we just daily hang black folks and whip them. All the racial problems we have, all the racial problems, we don't have racial problems in the South. It was all created by people who came here with the intent to divide and separate black folks and white folks in the South. And they almost pushed the loving relationship that we had asunder during the 12-year period of Reconstruction when they did everything. Bottom line.
What you're basically saying is if you took the Yankee out of the equation, there would be no racial tension in the South today, or in America for that matter.
Amen. If they left us alone, they would have found a society where it showed man the kind of love that Jesus Christ talked about he wanted when he came here on this planet. God came here, a man of love. And we all know what they did to him. And that's what they stopped. They had just left us alone. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution coming, slavery was on its way out. real emancipation was already taking place in places like the Commonwealth of Virginia. Southern folk knew that a man was not free. You couldn't just tell a man, okay, he's free. He had to have some land. He had to have some money. He had to have the ability of trade to take care of himself and his family. And these are the kind of things that they were teaching him about what freedom was all about in America. When they called themselves setting them free after the war was over with, it's the consequence of the war, burned out the South. Sent him right over to to get his. He went over there with a brown paper bag. Didn't even know what a vote was. Put your rest down on that paper over there and jot it down. Put the war criminals like Ulysses S. Grant in the White House, in government all over the South and America. They were stealing, robbing all the treasures of the South with the carpetbaggers and the Southern scalawags. They helped join in on them. Black man was a victim. He didn't know what he was doing. And he made folks in the South go start to go keep it. Other than Edgerton was coming down the road with a Union uniform on after the Yankees did what they did with all the burning and stealing and robbing and killing and murdering they had done. We were going to be happy to see him coming. He didn't know. He was a victim. Black folks were victims in this thing. But you don't understand it. See, if you don't have an understanding of what make a man start to not like you, even though it wasn't the totality of the loyal black folks in the South who did these things, enough were engaged in it to when I took one election over Ray Hampton. He hated black because of what they had indirectly caused to have happened by putting these folks in charge. And some of the things that he did to black folks after that, Ray Hampton would have never done it. Never as governor of South Carolina. This is a two-way street, but it's got tunnel vision on it. And these Yankees come around here with the proposed virtuosity that they have for black folks. No, they don't. No, they don't. If you did, and it's a key issue here too, I am so thoroughly ashamed of my home state of North Carolina. We have supposedly a monument protection bill here. You can't just come and start tearing down monuments and pulling them down and taking them places because you want to. The woman go, they right over in Durham, North Carolina, pull the monument down. Didn't even get a slap on the wrist for doing it. Right over the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, drug that monument down, was told you got 90 days to put it back. That lady waits about 80-something days to go, or about 3 or 4 days to go, pulls the base of the monument down and then resigns, saying that she was afraid that they couldn't protect the monument, yada, yada, on the last one. Had nothing to do with it. You had 90 days to put it back in its totality, and what did you do? You broke the law. Now, what the legislature and folks who's supposed to enforce the law, what's happening at the University of North Carolina? Nothing. What happened in downtown Durham? Nothing. When you can break the law, the people who defended the first one went over there and scratched their hand and put some blood on the money and throw a bucket of red thing on, call it a crime of necessity. The those who went along with that should have been smarter, should have been told off the bench you go. People went around talking about justice and all this other crap. There is no justice in the South of America for Southern folk and our heritage. That baby boy in Southfield was standing over here I was on the corner, and Avenue. I had to throw my bag up. 3 feet out of the car, they got on their Ku Klux Klan shit. Well, don't be nervous about us. Well, I've been running the Klan several times before. So I'm seeing them. And they said to me, you and the Sons of the Confederate Veterans, y'all been very diplomatic trying to deal with people. But we watched what happened in New Orleans when those women, our women, went down to try to stop them from taking down the monuments and the cenotaphs in New Orleans. We watched that the police were told to stand down. A man in a wheelchair with his battle flag on, one cocktail thrown in his wheelchair. They didn't even want to treat him at the hospital. We watched how they terrorized those women. We ain't going to have that. What you ought to do next year is just to throw your flag and go home for a while. 3 days later, in Charlottesville, Virginia, after all those people who gathered there went at a legal permit to protest moving the monuments. And that mayor said to his police chief, stand down and allow all those thugs with hoods over their head, baseball bats wrapped in barbed wire, the same thugs that went down into New Orleans, same thugs that gathered with George Soros and his boys, they started in on those folks. That young white boy jumped in his car. It wasn't fully wrapped tight 100% anyway. Scared to death because what he saw was these thugs going in on the people that he had come with, witness, nobody stopping him. He didn't really plan on killing that young girl. God bless her soul. They threw him under the bus even before he tried and convicted him before he went to trial. He was already tried and convicted. All the white supremacists came to town, the white nationalists. And that boy had been back in the days of wine herb. Even Yankee wine herb would have told that boy, hey, you get on out of here and go on back home. What he did. Now, I made a statement last week in Mississippi that I would ask Donald Trump to pardon that young man. I would ask him today if he stood in front of me to pardon that young baby boy that was in Charlottesville, because even the black police chief resigned because his heart could not allow him to face anybody else, knowing that he should have protected those folks who were there with permits to be there, that they God given First Amendment right to protest what was happening there in Charlottesville. And the only person who should have resigned should have been the mayor of Charlottesville and the mayor of New Orleans. They are two that should have resigned. Those folks had every right. And just like I told those folks about the Ku Klux Klan who came to the City of Asheville, they have a personal right to protest. If I take away the right to protest, I don't care what's coming out of their mouths. If I take away their right to protest, I can't go protest. Just that's my right as an American citizen to do that. So now, here we are.
The North Carolina Heritage Political Action Committee was organized by concerned citizens of North Carolina in 2015 in response to the increased attacks on North Carolina's history and heritage. The North Carolina Heritage PAC supports state and local candidates for public office who pledge and show their support for the protection of Confederate memorials and the preservation of all of North Carolina's history. We all know that Confederate memorials and symbols are the easy targets, and that the end game of our leftist enemies is to erase and rewrite all of history, from the colonies to the War on Terror. If we fight them for our state's rich Confederate history and heritage, we may be able to stop them from their mission of total destruction. Join the North Carolina Heritage PAC now by visiting ncheritagepac.org. Once again, that is www.ncheritagepac.org. And help us on the front lines of North Carolina politics. The mission statement of North Carolina Heritage PAC is that the North Carolina Heritage PAC was created with the purpose of supporting diverse efforts to defend and preserve the heritage, traditions, monuments, cemeteries, flags, emblems, and other legacies of North Carolina history against those efforts to remove, deface, legislate against, alter, and otherwise corrupt or pervert their meaning, history, presentation, and standing in our state. Once again, www.ncheritagepac.org. I understand that when the University of Mississippi basketball team made national news the other day for taking a knee during their Saturday basketball game, they supposedly did it to protest the white supremacists and the neo-Confederates that were, as they said, protesting there on their campus. But as I understand it, you were the neo-Confederate and you were the so-called white supremacist, and you were basically standing in front of one of the campus's Confederate monuments with a Confederate battle flag dressed as a Confederate soldier. And you were simply standing there having a rally in support of the monument. And it was not a protest of any kind, and that it wasn't any kind of a white supremacist gathering. It was just you. And then, of course, national radio talk show host Mark Levin got into that somehow, and you and Mark Levin got into something. Tell us about that.
Levin for Fox News, and I hate Fox News because they seem to have a little bit better sense than most of the rest of the national press. He writes about old Edgerton and him down there with serenading around with that uniform on, and with the white. And he was proud that the men on the black men on the basketball team took a knee for all of us, all of us, all of who, but because of the white supremacists on on their campus and the white supremacists downtown trying to those evil movements. Well, first of all, those same people that I stood with in Mississippi, God-fearing, God-loving, love their heritage, their ancestors, their fallen ancestors. I saw no hatred from anybody but the people across the street that called themselves protesting the white supremacists. The only white supremacist in the whole equation was Levin and those folks like that little white girl from Pittsburgh who came over to tell me that don't I feel no shame the way my people feel about me. What people are you talking about how they feel about me? I am one of the most loved men in the whole of the South land of America, about both red, yellow, black, white. And you talking about how they feel about me? Where you from? I'm from Pittsburgh, and I came down here to help save the black folks. Excuse me? Save us from what? You are the very ones who did these things. Any racial tensions from us. And I'll tell you this. Most of the campuses where I stood with my flag in my uniform, the ones who talk out the side of their neck against the South, the majority of them have been young white babies who come from the North End of America, who come here and act as though our universities belong to them. I was told by a Yankee from New Jersey in Chapel Hill to get off of his campus. His campus. Buddy, excuse me. You are here at the wishes of the Southern people. This campus does not belong to you. This is our campus. You're the person who's not at home. You're the one that needs to go home. So they come here and they try to poison our baby's mind. It's all right to take a knee against a flag or venerated someone by the United States company. It's all right. I want to make sure I'm clear on this too, especially when I'm talking about what these people did in legislatures not upholding the law. I don't know why I'm so hard on them, because the United States government said that the Confederate battle flag was a venerated symbol. Meaning you just can't do it if you want to do it. It's an American flag. And that the Confederate soldier is an American veteran. Do all the amenities of any other veteran and his sailors. But yet and still, you can come and burn our flags and in your ISIS-like fashion, pull our monuments down, take them down and move it. That is a contradiction of legislative mandate of our Congress. Something is wrong with this. Whole picture. If you're Southern, there is no equal protection upon the law in the court system. None. I've been there. I've sat there with Kirk D. Lyons arguing about our babies and their right to wear the Southern Cross. It is a venerated symbol. Yes, here I am battling. This is the biggest civil rights fight I've ever been into. This is what Lyons told me that I joined his board of advisors. And in Dixieland, I will make my stand for my Southern family.
You know, I've just enjoyed listening to this, and so I know that our listeners this will probably go on the radio a week from Friday, which would be, let's see here, the 15th, and I know that they'll enjoy this as much as I have.
Well, God bless you. Please, I want to thank you for taking up the time with me. I will probably be giving a keynote speech for the Confederate veterans in California, in Bakersville, California, during that time. But I'll certainly have an ear out for it.
All right. Well, I will look forward to hearing from you after it goes up. And if you want to share the link with people, feel free to.
Folks can reach me on my website at www.southernheritage411.com. Or they can email me and join my email list at hk.edgerton, EDGERTON, @gmail.com. Again, that's southernheritage411.com and hk.edgerton @gmail.com. And God bless you, sir, and thank you very much for even giving me the opportunity, or considering me for the opportunity to speak to your listening audience.
Oh, well, I'm happy to, and I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
All right. God bless.
God bless you too, sir. Bye.
Bye. That is my conversation with H.K. Edgerton. Like I said, sometimes you had to struggle just a little bit to listen to it, but definitely worth the effort. And I enjoyed listening to H.K. He's definitely a very interesting person to talk to and to get to know. But that is all the time that we have for this week's TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. So until next week, from all of us here at TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour, God bless and see you next week.